Welcome to the Artist 2.0 podcast. Artist 2.0 podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Artist 2.0 podcast. We have another episode today, and I'm really excited to bring you. And we're talking to Josiah Woodson. And actually, Josiah, he wrote in his email the phonetic way to say his name, and to make sure I said it correctly. So I'm just going to use it just to make sure he's happy. So it's Joe, yeah. Did I say it right? Yeah. Yeah, I have no career in comedy. But so Josiah, we met recently at a Christmas party that we were both invited to, through Asha, who you probably saw her interview last week. That was a great interview. If you haven't checked it out, go listen to it. And it was a super fun night. It was a bunch of artists, and we had some great conversations. Probably way too much to drink, but it was a super fun night. And then me and Josiah, we linked up when we met in Paris for coffee and got to talk a little bit more about, what he's doing here in Paris and what he's up to, and just, general, things about being an artist and theories and France and things like that. So that was also a great, fun conversation. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him today. So Josiah is a trumpet player, and he recently just won a Grammy, which is amazing. I know he plays a ton of other instruments, and right now he's also working on his first album. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's getting started with that, and that's going to be an exciting project. I think your first big projects are always kind of the most overwhelming and the most exciting.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you kind of find your musical legs? Do you think, were you always musically inclined, or did you kind of find it by accident?
Well, I think music is one of those things that was always with me, even before I was conscious of it. My dad's ever since I was like 6 or 7, he was in the ministry, and he's a pastor. And so we were always in churches, and every church has a piano or organ, and every church has long meetings. My brother and I were always in church, bored out of our skulls. So we always had an opportunity to kind of mess around with the piano a little bit. And I think that was sort of like my foundation. And then, like when we moved to California, when I was like, I don't know, 14. I had been playing the trumpet for like a year, but it had been a year since I'd played it, because I played it when I was 12, and then when I was 14, my dad kind of made me go to this jazz camp. And I don't know if you know anything about trumpet players, but we tend to be a little cocky. Like,
okay,
it's like singers, and then violinists, and then trumpet players in terms of the cockiest musician people. Okay. Anyway, I thought I was the best. I go to this jazz camp, realize I don't know what jazz is. I'm nowhere near the best, and I'm like in tears by Wednesday. But that just, I don't know, that kind of just shows where my head was at. And
how old were you?
14.
Okay, and you were already crying. You thought you were like the best at 14, and you got there and it's like, well,
that's right.
Bubbles burst.
Well, sort of, but sparked in the same way, because I discovered my passion for it. I mean, I loved it. Oh my goodness! By the end of the week, I had one of the mountaintop bright moments at the final performance, and then that just got me going. Like, I haven't looked back since then.
So that was the first time you ever touched the trumpet?
No.
No,
I played trumpet when I was like 12 in school, and I thought I was kind of good at it. I was better than the other guy, but we were both beginners. But then, after a year of not playing, then I got it.
So where did you grow up originally? Because you said you moved to California. From where?
Ohio. I was in Ohio until like 10 years old.
Okay. So after you kind of found this passion for the trumpet, what happened after that? Did you kind of go to a performing arts high school and kind of get formal training, or you were all kind of self-taught or had tutors? Or
Well, so in California, where I was in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, there's a high school that's sort of famous for producing great jazz artists like Joshua Redman came through there, Ambrose Akinmusire, Jonathan Finlayson, like a bunch of people came through this high school called Berkeley High School. I did not go to Berkeley.
Oh, it's funny. The last interview, Asha was talking about that. No, not Asha. The one yesterday, and they were talking about how I never even heard of Berkeley, but apparently this is like the top performing arts school or something like that. Or maybe not
the,
performing arts, musical arts.
there are two Berkeleys that are super famous. One of them is the high school in the Bay Area in
Okay.
Berkeley, California. And then the other one is the College of Music, which is crazy famous in Boston.
Okay.
And I've been right near both of them.
Near it.
Yeah,
Just right next to it.
right. I didn't go to either one, but the college I'm glad I didn't go to, but the high school I'm not sure, still not sure. I went to a high school that was okay-ish in jazz, but the thing that got me going was at that camp that I was talking about. I met a man that turned out to be my mentor, a man named Khalil Shaheed, who passed away a couple of years ago. But he was a trumpet player, and he's the one that's just inspired me to really play trumpet. And then when I got back home from the camp, it was a week-long camp out in the woods, Redwood Forest in California. When I got back home, my dad found that he taught these jazz workshops almost every day of the week. At one point, it was every day of the week, a different workshop. And so he made me go to the workshops, and I didn't want to go. But after the first one, it's the same story. I was in.
Okay.
And I was going to those some 3, 4, sometimes 5 days a week to these workshops.
Right.
And,
Well, I need some education on kind of trumpet playing because
okay.
from the outside you really can't see kind of the physical aspects of it.
Yeah.
But I know you probably have to have some strong ass lungs to be playing the trumpet. But how do you really kind of prepare and build for that? Is it like what do you really do to kind of get the capacity to I guess maybe just playing, but do you have any other exercises or
air capacity isn't the problem really, because you kind of have that naturally. I know there's a lot of brass players that talk about breathing like a baby, like you do when you're baby, when you haven't learned techniques or anything, you just kind of do it naturally. Okay. So that's the natural part, but there's a very, very unnatural part about brass instruments, and that's how you make the sound. You kind of, it's hard to explain, but you kind of spit into the mouthpiece. And that's the huge difference.
Really?
Yeah. That's the huge difference between, like, say, flute and saxophone and trumpet. Like flute, it's almost like you're blowing across a bottle. Like you hear people play jugs or bottles.
Yeah.
You're kind of just blowing across and creating sort of vibration with the air. And the saxophone, you have a stick of wood and you blow air across the wood and the wood vibrates. But in trumpet, it's literally your lips that are vibrating, and the trumpet is just an amplifier.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, right.
So you have to do a lot of lip training then.
That's right. And that's what we do. And that's the thing at the beginning of playing trumpet, man. And I mean, unless you're like a natural at it, which there are naturals, and that pisses me off to no end.
Of course.
Because I was not. It takes months to get even a passable, halfway decent, somebody would actually want to listen to this sound. And you have to build your range and all that stuff. I mean, it's a lot of painstaking work, because at the beginning you don't even have, there's these tiny little crisscrossing muscles at the corners of your mouth.
Yeah.
And they're nowhere near strong enough just
Really?
naturally
Wow.
to play the trumpet right. And so you have to.
That's crazy. So you have to build a whole like framework in the muscles of your face to even be able to play this instrument properly.
That's right.
That's crazy. I imagine you sitting there with like a stick and like weight and doing like weights or something to get like your face strong enough.
Some people do stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. So what type of stuff do you do besides actually playing the instrument to kind of make sure, I guess, the face and the lips are muscularly ready for it?
Nothing. I spend all the time just playing the instrument, because that's the end of the day, that's the best exercise, because you're actually doing it.
So how many hours do you say you spend just daily on average just practicing or whatever you do playing?
Oh, I don't count. I stopped counting a long time ago, because I found that I was aiming at the number
Right.
rather than aiming at quality of practice.
Right.
And I've read a lot of articles on it that say that practicing off and on is actually better because the brain remembers changes and difference. Whereas
Okay.
if you do the same thing for an hour and a half, you might build some muscle memory, but the
Mm,
brain is going to check out pretty quickly and you're not going to
right.
retain the information.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. So, what other instruments do you play besides the trumpet?
Let's see. I've been playing the flute for about 12 years, somewhere around there. My dad plays the flute, and I borrowed one of his flutes one time because I wanted to do what he did. Uh, and I also play the electric guitar. That is Boston's fault. That goes back to Berkeley, the
Okay.
College of Music, because
Okay.
it's like half the people there are singers or guitar players or both. And so I had a lot of friends that went there, and I went over to one of their houses one day when I was in grad school at New England Conservatory there, right around the corner from Berkeley. And he had a guitar. He practicing his guitar, and he put it in my hands, and I was like, "Oh wow!" Like that. I think the next day I went and bought some secondhand guitar,
Okay.
and I never stopped. That summer I was practicing. I had nothing to do, so I was practicing like 17 hours a day on guitar.
Wow.
It's about 10 years ago.
You could be like a one-man band. Well, I don't even know how you would be able to hold all the instruments
Yeah.
in one, but that would be a new challenge. That would really be interesting. So your family was musically inclined, so that was kind of no.
Sort of, sort of. My dad loves music, but I'd say don't tell him. But my mom, she's actually the one that has, I think, more of an innate ear because
Okay.
I you hear her sing and she just snaps to like one of the harmonies
Okay.
naturally. And so,
Okay.
but both of them love music and both of them instilled that love in me.
Okay. So then, so where did you go for university for your kind of musical continuation?
Right. So right after high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I loved music, but I just didn't care, man. That's when I look back, that's the real thing. Like I
Okay.
did just enough to get A's and B's so to get my dad off my back, but I didn't care. I didn't care. The only thing I cared about was music, kind of. But then I didn't really think past high school. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Um, yeah, but so I applied to Oberlin Conservatory, and that's where I ended up doing my undergrad, which is in North Ohio. So I returned to Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was that program?
Oh, it was life changing for me. It's hard to explain, but it's like you're coming off of being one of the top guys in your high school, and then you go to this place where so many of the top guys or girls or people in their high school are all congregated in the same place. And so now you have to find your order again, and there's pressure, and it's good pressure, but it's like it's still pressure, so
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't
Yeah.
always feel good. And then I had some great instructors, um, socio-politically, and socioeconomically. College can be one of those places that kind of leaves a lot of minorities out, not only on the student side, but on the professorial side. But I got really, really lucky that this jazz program had a lot of very strong African American teachers that really were able to create the type of environment where the music that came out was fresh and real and not like a factory,
Okay.
like it was real. And those guys knew how to put the pressure on.
Really?
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh gosh.
So tell
So
me about a little bit about the competition that you had to go through in university. But I'm always interested in performing arts, like, universities and high schools, because every time I think of it, all I ever think about, you remember that old TV show Fame?
fame, yeah.
And you see everyone just like bursting out into song and dance every 5 minutes, and I kind of have in my head that like that's what all performing arts schools are like.
Well, my school wasn't necessarily performers. It was a conservatory, so it
Okay.
was all musicians
Okay.
and singers.
Okay.
Um, and so, but the competition in there, it's like, man, there isn't this super like, okay, this person's better than this person's better. It's not like super regimented. It's like everybody kind of has an idea who the most famous or the best person is, or the person people are talking about. But there's always that sort of like, I don't know, I can't really describe it, but there's a pressure to learn. I don't know. It's like a miracle grow for artistic talent.
Okay. Do you consider yourself to be a performing artist, or do you think it's separate as a musician?
No, I think they're one and the same, performing arts and musicians. But I rarely think of myself as a performance artist, because when I think of that, I really think of, I don't know, like dancers or people who really envision people watching them. Whereas for me, I'm I'm a I'm very introverted, and
Hmm.
so when I think of performing, and when I'm actually performing, I go into myself, and I don't really come out. I have to
Okay.
work on that
So
to
you don't,
interact with the audiences. But yeah,
well, I guess you don't really get to really if you're playing an instrument because you're kind of preoccupied instead of having to kind of like entertain people kind of physically, really. You're kind of
no,
just,
people do that. I mean, I know a lot of people that are really good at entertaining and connecting with people even through their instrument. Because
okay.
the music is a language, and it's like a universal language that everyone can kind of understand there.
Yeah. But you prefer to just like block them all out and just be in your own world.
And I don't really block them out. Like, I sort of invite them in. Yeah,
Mm,
it's almost like the performance space is inside of myself rather than
interesting.
being out in the real world.
Okay. So when you perform, do you close your eyes or you keep your eyes open the whole time?
It depends. If I'm reading music, I leave my eyes open.
Good
But
point.
I do a lot of improvising, spot composing, and then I mostly close my eyes.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit kind of about how you got to Paris because you've been here for 4 years now. I think you
Yeah,
told me
yeah.
that last time. So how did you kind of make your way here and transition into a, not, I guess not transition into a musician. That's what I was going to say, but that was a stupid question. But transition into kind of being a musician here in France and, finding connections and gigs and work here because I think France is definitely a whole different ballgame when it comes to networking and getting word
Yeah.
of mouth connection and even the types of jobs you can get here. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So let's see, a little over 5.5 years ago, I got married, and I surprised my wife with a honeymoon here in Paris. Now, I had never been over here to Paris. I'd been to Europe, but I hadn't been to Paris before. But she had, but it was, long, long time ago. So we came here. We stayed in this hotel that's actually not far from where we live now. We stayed 7 days, something like that. Went and then we came back, and then by the next summer, she's finishing her PhD in social organizational psychology from Columbia. So we were in Brooklyn, New York, and by the next summer, she had gotten this email off of a listserv that said that there was a job out in Rouen, which is about an hour to the west of Paris by train. And she says to me, she was like, "Hey, do you want to move to France?" And I was like, "No, I, I don't." But I was like, "Hey, you know what? Apply for the job. If you get it, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." And she did, and she got it. So I was like, "Argh." So,
I
so
put my foot
it
in my
actually,
mouth, didn't I?
right. So our, even though the job wasn't in Paris, our agreement was that eventually we'd live in Paris,
Okay.
because for me, I'd need to be in some sort of hub like this
Yeah, yeah.
to sort of restart my career. But it wasn't a small decision for me. It wasn't like, oh, okay, now let's go to Paris, because I had been working in New York for what, 5 years or so at that point, and it taken me that long to be able to comfortably sustain myself with
Yeah.
music, because it's all about context. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
about who knows you. It almost has nothing to do with your actual skill. You can't just be the baddest player on earth and nobody knows you and
Right.
expect to get all kinds of gigs. I mean, some people do it, but it doesn't happen that way for everybody. So I really had to sort of not start from zero, but kind of move back and like go back to networking, go back to going to all the jam sessions, introducing myself, learning another language so that I could speak to people how they would understand.
So, well, that's a good point. So let's back up a little bit. So after you finish university, you have now this degree in music and you have all these wonderful skills. How did you kind of start building your name and your connections, just, organically?
So the one thing I always tell younger people is, I don't know whether you want to call it luck or the universe or whatever, there's always some very, very important factor that you don't have control over. And so let's see, after I finished undergrad at Oberlin, I went to graduate school at New England Conservatory, like I said, spent 2 years there in Boston. Can't stand Boston. Loved the school. The school was great.
Okay.
And then I moved to New York. That's one of the places you go when you want to be a freelance musician in this music. And so I went there, and it was a crazy struggle. I could, that's the thing. I can't tell you how. I can't even really tell you how I did it.
Yeah, I know that feeling when I was because I was born and raised in Brooklyn, so I know how trying New York can be. But there's also the sense of possibility in New York.
Oh yeah.
And you're around such competition because New York is a big city and everyone is a dreamer that goes there. And New York City is a city that definitely kick you harder and keep kicking you until you're able to kind of fight for what you want, really.
Right.
But you're kind of in it so deeply, it's hard to even look back and like, how the hell did I do that? I don't know. It's just like, I just came out of it somehow.
It's an amazing amount of pressure because everyone, and it's such a hustle city. Everyone's hustling in and outside of your area or your field. And then everything moves by so quickly. Like, oh my goodness, the connections, it's like a New York minute. That's a real thing.
So how long were you in New York for?
About 5 years before we eventually moved here.
Okay, what part of New York did you live in?
At first, before I reconnected with my now wife, I was in Jersey City. Okay. So I was grabbing the PATH train back and forth every single day, just about. And then we moved into Brooklyn, Crown Heights.
Okay. So then you came to Paris and you had to kind of like rebuild. Were any of those connections transferable at all? Do you had like someone who knew somebody once upon a time whose cousin was also into music who, might have had a gig or something for you? Or how did you kind of get your first gig here?
So I tried to make those connections, but that's not how it ended up happening. The first connection actually came through my father, who at the time, like I said, he's a pastor. At the time, he was working through a church organization that had ties to an organization here. And so before I even got here, I was emailing and in contact with those people who put me in contact with one of their Christian friends who's a guitar player named Jean Chaumont, who actually asked me to play two or three gigs with him, I don't know, like 3 days after I got here, or after I was going to get here. So like before I even...
Where you moved to originally?
No, in Paris, actually.
In Paris, okay.
Right, when I was living in Rouen.
Okay.
So before we moved, he booked me for 2 or 3 gigs out here in Paris. So my first gig in Paris was 3 days after we landed with all of our stuff.
So you straight out the airport, basically, you're here, you don't speak the language, you don't know anyone, you're not even in the major city that you're going to be playing in, and you have this gig, and you have to figure all this out.
Exactly, and it's like night and day between now and then, because I remember riding in the car with the drummer from that gig, and we could barely talk. It's like your speech goes back to a rudimentary thing. He's like, he points to the red light, and he's like, He's like, yeah, we call that a red light. He's like, he's like, what do you call it? And I'm like, red light. And he's, you know, like
That's so funny.
it's like complete reversion because oh man, we went
I
through the
love
basic
how,
elements.
you think your cultures are so different and you come here and it's like, wow, we're not that different. We call red lights too. It's crazy.
Well, I translated
I
it. They
know.
call it red fire, which I think is a little more, I don't know, cool.
Yeah. Okay. So then you came to Paris and you did your first gig, and how did that turn out?
It was cool. It was like a wedding thing, and then I forget what the second one was. It was like, I don't know, some kind of function that Jean was playing for. But the ironic part about the whole thing is that Jean, um, he had been married, I think, right before we met, sometime before we met. But now he lives in New Jersey, so
You kind of
we
switched.
switched. We completely switched places. He's over at Princeton now, trying to rebuild his own
Yeah.
stuff over there. So we talk from time to time about how that process is going.
It's so funny. So what did you find that was different between you building your career in New York versus Paris?
Here, let's see, and it's not necessarily good or bad. It's a blessing and a challenge.
Right.
In New York, I was uh, just another Black American jazz musician. Like I thought I was pretty good. I mean, I made myself heard, but I was one of some very talented people.
Yeah.
Here, I'm a Black American jazz musician in France among predominantly French people, and that's a different thing, especially in the jazz circles. And like I said, it's a blessing and a curse to be cliche about it,
You think
because
it
it's
gives
like
you a little bit of leverage? Because, it's like the American artist in Paris. It's a little bit more cachet than, just being another fish in an American
right.
pond. Here you're kind of, the stranger, the foreigner in a new land.
Yes, but it's even more complicated than that because it's not just Americans, Black American in jazz, a music that Black Americans created, um, being played here. So it's almost like a transport of our culture or my culture or the legacy that I was born into being, I say commodified, but I'm militant. Let's just say used here
Okay.
or developed here in a French way. And so I find what it does is it elevates me really, really quickly in that people remember me and remark me and, oh, that's that guy. And like everyone's heard of me. Well, not everyone, but
Yeah.
lots and lots of people have heard of me. But it kind of pushes me right up against the glass ceiling because it's not 1948,
Okay.
I'm not a GI, they've had time to learn and sort of develop our culture in their
Right.
own way.
Well,
Us,
I'm not really big on the music scene here in Paris, just because I don't particularly find it that interesting. Like I don't see there's anyone that's really doing anything original. It's just kind of regurgitated stuff. So I that's one thing I miss about New York because I used to love hearing live music and people, and it was all something new and original, and I miss that. So I'm not really familiar with the music scene here at all. But specifically with the jazz scene, I mean, I don't think there's a huge jazz influence here in Paris. I mean, there's probably a small one. Like, I don't know. You let me know. You've been in that
oh,
world a little bit longer. What do you think?
it's huge. It's huge.
Okay.
Jazz is a complicated word for so many historical and socioeconomic and political reasons. But I'll say just Black American music in general, which has the philosophy of jazz going through what gospel, blues, rock and roll, pop, hip hop, all that. It absolutely dominates
Okay.
Paris culture with the young people. Period.
Okay.
There's nothing as influential as African American culture here in Paris, besides the dominant influences, which are French influences.
Okay. So you're
But like in
broadening the
terms of young
term
people,
jazz then, because when I think jazz, I think kind of traditional jazz that we think of, but I think you're using it in a much
there's a
broader term.
there's a reason why we're led to think that when we hear the word jazz, and
Okay.
that's part of the stickiness, that I was talking about. But yeah, no, just Black American music, Black
Okay.
American influence, because it's just us.
Okay.
That's just what it is. And that influence goes through every every aspect of music that's actually popular today, from Adele to, I don't know, Electro Deluxe or Electro Fast or whoever you have out here.
Okay, so tell me your opinion, because I saw you bobbing your head, you were agreeing, or I was talking about, the kind of the creativity that you're like musically in New York that you find versus here, you don't really see that much originality in musical performances or in live performances, or when you go out to, a cafe and there's a singer or something like that. It's usually all kind of, someone else's song that they're singing. So, what do you think of that? Do you have an opinion? Do you think that you're able to kind of do a unique performance, or that's just not something that the French Parisians are interested in at all?
So, um, remember how? Have you heard of the stuff that's going on with the Academy Awards this year and last year? How it's like Academy Awards so white or Oscars so white,
Yeah, I've
and
been hearing that, but I haven't been following it.
and it's like, well, if you are a black actor in that, do you say something? Because if you say something, the Academy is white, so they could, like, even if they move forward, even if they're moved by your words, they still ain't gonna give awards, right? So do you say something? And it's like, I find that the choice that I'm going to write a paper about, that choice is prevalent here too. And it's like, man, how much do I say about that? Like, I, when I guess I say that as a preface. When you look at Europe in general and you look at their history in terms of their relationship with the rest of the world, you see some problematic behavior, and that problematic behavior spidered into the culture now of
Right.
what's happening. And so it's like, just like they colonized Africa, in a lot of ways that's their natural thing, because they're in that sort of vein, or that's the thing that they're following. And so when they see things like African American culture, they they mimic it, and then they take it, and so it's like they're building they're building their scene. Let's call it a scene. They're building their scene on somebody else's music, and so mimicry is king. Whereas for us, mimicry is the jester. Mimicry
Yeah.
is the clown.
Yeah.
You want to be a clown?
It's like you're taking a lesson without having to experience it. Like you can know it
Absolutely.
superficially, maybe abstractly, but in the process of actually doing it and experience it, there's this depth that you don't get when you can just give someone the answer.
Exactly, exactly. It's like Europeans' tradition, and outside of colonialism, and that dynamic, which is huge. Their tradition is written, and African tradition is oral. So they're taking an oral tradition and forcing it into a written context, and that's what's. And the thing that you lose is the realness. You lose the people. You lose the history. You lose Mingus writing Fables of Faubus. You miss all of Miles's movements and why that happened, and the collaborations Dizzy had in Cuba, and the influence that brought into the music, and the influence that had in Brazil, and all those things. You miss all of that because you're just looking at a book, and this is how you swing. And guess what? That's not how you swing.
Right.
You missed it because you
Yeah.
tried to read it. You can't read how to swing. You have to live it,
Right.
and that's what they miss. And so they think that's swing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ding a ding, ding a ding, ding a ding. No,
Exactly.
you're not swinging.
So you're in a very kind of unique position almost though, because I've been living here for 7 years now, as an artist, and you can either conform to what sells, or you can just like fuck it and do what you want. And I think I'm not going to judge any artist. I see why people choose the sides that they do, and I know
Right.
artists who have done both. But at the same time, I think there is definitely a hunger for something new here. So
Mm.
for the ones who do choose to be like, you know what, I don't care what the cultural conformity, or what's marketing and selling and stuff like that. I'm going to use my own voice. And I think there is definitely a crowd for that. I think there's something that I don't I can't speak for all of Europe, but here in France, they want something new. They don't know it, but if you have the guts to do it, you actually find a lot of people slowly start, paying attention to you. So, what side of the fence do you think, or maybe you're undecided yet?
Oh, you can look at my face and know what the answer to that question. Like I can't be a mimicker. I
Yeah.
can't. Like, it would kill me. Like, I got offers to do some gigs, some sort of long-term gigs that would take me out of the creative aspect of music and just thrust me into the do the same thing, the same exact thing every night, and it just it almost makes me sick to think about myself doing that. Like, I couldn't. I don't care. I don't care if I never make another album, if nobody ever buys anything. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to
Yeah.
be frank, and I'm going to be me. And
Yeah.
I'm going to push it, and I'm going to try my best to continue the legacy of my people and of the music. I'm not going to try and mimic or imitate anyone.
Okay. So you said you've been here, what, 4 years?
4.5, yeah.
So it's I for me, when I think about the timeline of an artist here, I think 4 years is kind of the point where you've kind of made the connections and kind of done the gigs that you needed to do to get your name out there. And maybe you're at the mark where you can kind of start thinking about personal projects and stuff like that. Has that been the line for you, or have you already kind of done your own personal projects here in Paris?
I've been doing my own personal projects here in Paris.
Okay.
I sort of started there. Um, like, let's see. I think 3 years ago I had my first performance under my own name here on December 31st, my wife's birthday. Um,
Oh, New Year's
and
baby.
yeah. Uh, so yeah, I've been along that path for years now here. And
Okay.
I guess maybe I'm too, when you're too close to it, I'm too close to my own career. I don't have the perspective.
Right.
Maybe in 4 years I'll be able to look back and see a line,
Yeah.
but I don't really see a line at this point. I see a progression
Right.
of my realizations and learning.
Okay. So how do you think your own personal work has been received here so far? Maybe that's still too soon for you to talk about.
I think once people come out and hear the actual music, I don't think there's any problems. I think people really like it. I don't think I've played a bad show in terms of the music not being received well.
Hmm.
But as you know, there's a whole bunch more stuff that goes into it to actually get the people to come
Yeah.
to the show. I mean, and that's the business side of things, the promotional marketing aspect of things that I'm now jumping into and learning and kind of learning on the fly, really.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about your Grammy win. I mean, that must be super exciting. I mean, tell us a little bit about the project. Um, and just kind of the whole experience. I can only imagine winning something of such esteem as an artist. I mean, I can, me myself, if I was projecting it, I would have been just crying like,
I didn't
like
quite feel like
I
that.
finally have something like tangible or something. But anyway, so tell us a
uh,
little bit about that.
well, the whole thing is surreal. I think anybody can kind of understand that. But so for me, the Grammy is really just like the icing on top of the cake
Yeah.
that was working with Beyonce and being exposed to that level of the game. If
So
you
how
will.
did you even get on to working with Beyonce, and just kind of give us the whole backstory?
So the most powerful network any musician has in general is the network of musicians and friends that they have that they meet and they cultivate in university and grad school and those things. Now, not everybody follows that mode, but that's you call your friends and your friends call you. So if anybody's listening and you're in university, make friends. Whatever you have to do to make friends.
Buy everyone off, period.
Look, hey, if that works, if you got money, use your resources. But so a long time great friend of mine named Alex Asher was in a band, and I'll try and speed through this, was in a band in Boston, and that band did Afrobeat stuff. Now, I wasn't a part of this band, but at the same time at Berkeley, I think Nikki Glaspie, the drummer, she was there, and so she had heard of this band that did Afrobeat. Skip to the future, Nikki's one of the two drummers that is working with Beyoncé. Beyoncé is and this is a bit of conjecture on my part. She's producing Fela, the musical, and so she's kind of got this Afrobeat ear, and she's like, well, I want to try a session with some Afrobeat musicians, and we're going to need Afrobeat horns. So does anybody know anybody? And she, through Nikki Glaspie, contacted Alex Asher, the trombone player, who was part of the horn section of this band. So Alex started calling his buddies that was in that band. One of them, bad tenor player named Drew Sayers. Bad means incredibly excellent.
Yeah.
I don't want any static.
Who doesn't get the slang translation?
Right. This cat is bad.
Yeah.
He wasn't there. He was touring Europe, and you know, I'm just sitting on my butt. So I get this email from Alex, that he was like, "Hey, Beyonce needs a horn section."
And you were like, "What?"
No. It's an email. So he at the end of the email, he goes, "No joke." like he's like, no, really, show up tomorrow. So I show up. I'm slightly late. This is the abridged version. So I'm slightly late, and I get there, and it's in Manhattan. It's like, I think, I don't know, maybe 50th, 48th there near Times Square. And you know, we go up to the studio. It's one of those really hot studios. And we get in, and I walk in the room, and Beyonce is on the ground with her MacBook Pro on her lap, and her legs she's on the wall, and she's sitting on the ground. And the first thing I do when I walk in the room is step over her legs and walk over to where I was supposed to be. Because I was late.
Did you not recognize her? Or you were
no, I recognized her. There was no other way to get by.
Okay.
Because it was there was a lot of people in one small studio booth.
Okay.
But I don't think she even noticed me at that point. But then she noticed me a little bit later. But man, and that was just so cool. And it was just a jam session, and we were just kind of spitballing ideas, and she would kind of play a track. But she loved it so
brain
much.
About to explode. Like, did you was it like this experience that was happening outside of your body? Like, were you able to process it in the moment?
Luckily, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's musical training, but luckily all of us were able to put all of that completely aside, and me, I was able to retreat within myself and to get to that musical place where we were just making music. I wasn't like, that's Beyonce, I'm gonna try to play something. I was just like, no, all right, this is the groove. Let's play it. Let's do it again. Let's play it. And she loved us so much that what she did at that session was she dismissed everybody else. There were percussionists there. There were other people there. I think there was a bass player. I'm not sure what was happening, but she dismissed everybody. She put the cans on our heads, and we started recording things. And she called us back 3 times over the next 3 days, and then several times over the next 6 to 8 months. And we worked on several projects of hers, but some of the things that you've actually heard are the things that we've done for the album 4. And so we're on about 7 tracks on the album 4. That's Alex Asher, and the horn section is called the Superpower Horns. And there's a website for that as well. But yeah, to answer your question, so we did each session, whether it was just a couple hours or like 8 hours or 10 hours, something like that, because we spent a long time working actually with her, which is, a lot of people ask me that, was it her band? There were only a couple sessions where she wasn't there, but for the most part she was there, and we were working actually with her on lines, and talking to her about the lines and getting her feedback on what she liked in terms of what we played and that. But then when we left the studio every day, then it hits you. Then it's like 2 a.m. In Times Square. You just left the studio. You walk by the limo where she came in and you were walking down the street like, wow. I just sat next to Jay-Z as he's
Wow.
playing PlayStation
That's crazy.
after coming out of the booth recording for Beyonce's project.
Wow, that's crazy. So now tell us about the Grammy win. I mean that sounds like a fun experience, but I think as artists, as we go on through our careers, we're always going to work with someone who we are inspired with. At least that's the hope. To be able to kind of work with somebody who you feel really inspires you, who's doing something great, and things like that. But at the same time, to be able to win an award, I think that's a whole nother level.
It is. It's
on that scale too.
Like I said, that's really the icing for me. That's not the part that I remember. That's really the part that I'm lucky enough that shows everybody else what I did. But if I hadn't won that Grammy, I would still be as awed as I was by that process and by the, like I said, the exposure to that level of the game,
Right.
But the Grammy is really good because it helps all of us in the project. Well, really me and my fellas, for people to be like, oh, okay, that's what you did. For people that don't know us to be like, oh, okay, this you're valued because you did that, and that's very cool. Because before that, a lot of people, especially outside the music community, they really don't know what we do. I mean, I really get the sense a lot of people don't even know we're doing stuff, because today it's so easy to just have music in a can where you just press the button and then you watch the singer do everything. I remember I was in the airport one time in New York, this rambunctious kid. He was like, he found out I was a musician. He was talking to me. Flight was delayed. So he was like, what's that person who's on the stage and it's the person that knows everything? What do they call? And I was like, the music director? And they're like, no, it's the person, they're always in the middle of the stage. And I'm like, the piano player? And he's like, no. And then I'm like, the singer? And he's like, yeah, the singer. And I'm like,
how old was this kid?
he was like, I don't know, 8.
Wow.
He kept talking about Star Wars. But it's like a lot of people have that perception where sometimes the singer is the one that knows.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, that's the only person on stage that doesn't know what key we're in.
Right.
Right. That's the one person that doesn't, I mean, they're very talented, but that's the one that knows the least about actually what's happening. And so but we're all kind of focused on that part, that job, that role that we miss, and we miss what else is happening. And so
I think
those people see my Grammy and go like, hey, you're somebody.
Exactly, because it's hard, I think, with art in general, because art is something that you have to experience.
Yeah.
So, if I'm at a cocktail party, I'm telling somebody I'm a photographer, it means a squat diddly. If you can't actually see my images of what I'm doing, it means nothing to you.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
So it's hard to get, people outside of a creative community to kind of see you as doing something. It's like, this thing where you're just an artist and it's like, okay, so that means you're a barista? I'm like, no.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But okay, well, what's your real job?
Exactly.
It's like, no, this is my real job.
Exactly. So that's what, this award is. It's like showing the rest of the world, like,
exactly.
See? I told you.
Look, see, I'm of value. You see this? So, I'm a valued member of society.
So do you actually have a statue?
No. Okay. I only Beyonce, and I think the producer gets a statue. I'm not exactly sure. I actually I have a certificate, but I just got it this past summer because I just found out how to get it. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But so what you do is you write to the Academy and you send them some money, and proof that you're actually on the thing that won, and then they send you a Grammy in your, saying your role, but it's just a piece of paper. It's a nice piece of paper.
You should get it miniaturized and put it out like a business card. So when you go out, you can
just put the Grammy logo on the side of the business card. You understand that?
Exactly. All right. Cool. So I want to ask you a couple of questions here.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you this question, even though we just talked about your Grammy, because I'm interested to hear if your answer is the same or different. But what was one of the defining moments in your life or career?
One of the defining moments. I'd say the Grammy was a mountaintop moment, but I think the defining moments in my career are the opposite of that in terms of, I don't know, prestige. Like they're the hardest parts. Like when I was in undergrad, I had there were times where I really got my butt kicked. Like there's these things called juries, and that's how it works at the end of the freshman and sophomore year at some conservatories. You know, you have like 60 or 70 tunes to learn by heart.
Damn.
Yeah, you have to learn your part. You have to learn the chords. You have to be able to solo over the chords. Um, you have to demonstrate good knowledge about these tunes. And for my freshman jury, I did fine, but for the sophomore jury, I didn't pass the first time, and so I'll tell you this story really quickly. So, in the sophomore year, I didn't pass, so I have to redo it at the end of the first semester of my junior year, or I get kicked out, and that's it. So I'm shedding my butt off.
Okay.
Shedding means practicing. So I'm in the woodshed practicing my butt off that entire semester. Now, this is what, 2002, 2001. Um, and what my professor, Wendell Logan, who was the chair of the department, who passed away a few years ago as well, he sent me an email, because what he has to do is he has to get all the teachers together to give me a final exam, you know? And so that's like a scheduling thing for them. So, and he's old school. And this is what I was talking to you about. And most of the teachers there were old school, African American, been through it, really in the culture. Even not everyone was African American, but everyone was like in the culture. Everyone was real. Everyone wasn't like a, you know, professor. They were musicians, you know, and that was part of the magic of that program. And so he sent me an email in December of when to meet. He didn't call me. He didn't tell me when I saw him almost every day. He sent me an email.
Wow.
And because of his computer and the timestamp on his computer, the email went back to 1982, 84, something like that. Like, and so my Hotmail at the time put it at the bottom of a list, and it was like 2,000 emails in this, and I'm looking every day. I'm looking for this email, but it went to the bottom of the stack, and I didn't find it until after this entire process was over. So we get to the end of the semester, and we get to January term, and I'm like, all right, it's still coming. I haven't seen the email, and all through January. Now I'm really shedding in January, because I'm like, when I get back, it's probably going to happen. So I get back, and he looks at me and he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what do you mean, what am I doing here? He's like, you didn't show up to your jury. And I'm like, what jury? Like, what are you talking about? I was looking for that email. You never sent the email. And like I said, he's old school, hard.
Yeah.
So I had to convince him to let me redo it.
And so pretty much you just fell down on the floor and started crying until he agreed.
There were no tears. I would say that right now. No, I had to be really convincing, and tears would not have moved him.
Okay.
I had to be convincing, and then I had to pass that jury with those guys in the room. They had all showed up exactly.
Yeah, who were already like,
they had already showed up. They're like, what are you doing here? And I passed. Now that's a defining moment for me.
Wow.
That's something, only 7 people know, because we were the only ones in the room at the time.
Yeah, and that, I definitely wanted to ask you that question even after the Grammy, because I don't necessarily think, these big grandiose moments or even moments of recognition are the defining moments in an artist's career. I actually think moments like that are more defining than, anything afterwards. It's kind of those moments that people don't even know you went through, and and not even proving to anyone else how determined you were, but proving to yourself how determined you were.
Absolutely.
I think those are true defining moments in an artist's life.
Absolutely.
So tell us about one of your biggest heartbreaks or disappointments as an artist, because that happens a lot.
Yeah. So my sophomore year, we had these juries, right? And
it's the same story.
Yeah, it's the same story. Okay. I mean, I have some other moments. I remember I was on stage one time. My teacher at Oberlin invited me to play at the Detroit Jazz Festival Trumpet Summit. So these are some of the baddest young trumpet players across America, all meeting in Detroit. And I had to play this one song because he invited me up to play. My teacher, Marcus Belgrave, who also passed away a few years. Yeah, I was lucky to meet all three of these men who passed away, because they were all three of them griots who passed on a lot of stuff to me and a lot of stuff to many, many students. But he invited me up there, and I didn't even have my trumpet because of circumstances. I didn't know I was supposed to play that day. I don't think I was supposed to play, but he invited me up to play because he saw something in me. What? I don't know. But he saw something in me, asked me to play, and he gave me his trumpet. And I'll say this, I played so poorly because I didn't know the tune, and it was a hard tune. It wasn't a tune that, I have a very good ear, but I just pick it up listening to it. Now I know the tune. I didn't know it. I played so badly that he apologized to the crowd afterwards.
Oh, why? That's bad.
Bad. And it's just a butt-kicking moment. It's like, hey.
So what did you learn from that?
Always be prepared. Yeah, be prepared. Work hard by yourself. Yeah, and I guess know your limits. I was so excited to play that I thought I could figure it out. Couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
I really wish he had picked a tune that you can kind of hear, because this is not a tune that you could just hear. But anyway, yeah, it was one of those moments.
Okay. So what inspires you now in your kind of creation of your own personal pieces? Where do you get your inspiration from? What motivates you?
Like in a general sense, or like in a specific sense?
I'll let you choose.
Okay.
Both are actually very interesting ways. So.
Okay. In a general sense, the thing that inspires me and kicks my butt are my friends. I read something a while back that resonated with me, that said that it often guys, they respond well and they learn quickly in environments of competition, in like friendly competition among guys. That's why guys are always sort of jockeying for a position, but they still love each other. They're still friends, you know. You know, on sports teams and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that really motivates me and kicks my butt is seeing my friends do these amazing things. Like in terms of my generation of jazz musicians that are out there doing their thing, most of them I know specific. Most of the ones that are like at the top of this game, I know specifically, and I've known for years and years, and they inspire me on the business side and on the artistic side. It's like, oh, okay, maybe that's a new direction I can kind of move forward, a new technique I can sort of incorporate into what I'm doing, and things like that. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think that's well. There's this famous adage, you know, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So you know, if you hang out with talented, high performers, successful people, like, you almost have to rise to their level to meet them there, because they're not going to come down to you. Like, who's going to do that? So it is great if you can surround yourself with, you know, people who are doing better than you. Not even who are on the same level you, but better, so you can kind of meet them there and push yourself forward. So it's great to kind of that you have those connections, and it's an interesting way. I guess you could think of it as competition. Me myself, personally, I don't really think there's competition when you speak about creativity. I just, it is a disconnect for me. Like, everyone has a unique voice. I'm not competing with anyone. I'm just expressing it through my own perspective. So I don't really believe in competition when it comes to creativity. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I do.
You do?
Yeah. Now, competition isn't the end all be all. It doesn't go all the way down, to the bone and to the marrow. I mean, it's just like, oh wow, that was an incredible technique. I want to try and learn that, or I want to try and learn something as incredible as that. And in that sense, it's competing, and not in the sense that, oh, I won, you lost. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a football game. It's more of a broader sense of competition, which is just a way to look at things, which is not, it's not intrinsic, it's not necessary, but if it helps, like it helps me. It helps me to be like, man, that is cool. I want to be that cool, and listen to that, and help that inspire me.
But do you think that's competition or inspiration? Because you can
Oh,
argue that, okay, well, what I was going to say is that all art is kind of on the shoulders of artists that came before us. There's always inspiration that we take from it and we incorporate it into what we do. And I just think more of that as an inspiration than a competition. But
okay,
I guess I agree with you. I think it's both. I think it's more verbiage or kind of the way you want to interpret it that works for you,
right,
than anything. I don't really think
right,
there's
right,
right or
right,
wrong.
right, right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's 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 most likely just, I don't know, a difference in definition. Some people see it as competition. Some people see it as inspiration. Some people see it as sympathetic resonations because you're close to somebody that's resonating vibes. Yeah, all those things. But yeah, I definitely think there are negative aspects to all of those things. Like inspiration can turn to mimicry if you're not careful. Competition can turn to fighting if you're not
Yeah,
careful. So I think everything within its bounds.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell us about what projects you're working on now and you're getting started on.
Okay. Well, I have two personal projects of my own. One of them is a quintet of mine named Quintessential. Um, and I guess the nucleus of the quintet, or the inspiration for the project, is the five elements, just like the title suggests. We have I have an elemental suite that we play, which goes through the five elements in a progression. And there's actually stanzas of a story poem that I've written, that goes along with each song. That sort of, when you hear it in performance, it'll sort of draw you in and show you, I don't know, give you a mental image of the inspiration behind each of the pieces. So that's the nucleus. And then we have other songs. And I'm writing a song actually right now, um, called Rising Fall, which is a brand new song. And then there's my other project called JWP, which stands for Josiah Woodson Project. So whereas Quintessential is, I guess you could call it modern jazz, sound painting, JWP is more, I don't want to say modern pop, but it's definitely more groove and dance oriented music. But as with everything I do, there's, I don't know, there's a, in certain respects, I make it so that it's not mimicry. So even if we're doing cover songs,
Hmm.
it's not going to sound exactly like the song. Like I'm going to do something to it. From anywhere from, oh, okay, that's a little different, or to, I had no idea that was that song until I heard the lyrics.
Right, right. Well, that's actually interesting. And just I'm going to ask you because for musicians, you hear a lot of musicians kind of just putting their own spin on popular songs and stuff like that. But I'm wondering where's the fine line between that, maybe creatively and maybe even legally, because I mean I really don't know, so I don't even know where to start. But I was going to say it's like a lot of popular songs, you'll see people like redoing it on YouTube and things like
Yeah,
that. Like, are they even allowed to do that, or?
yeah. the thing you're not allowed to do is to take the physical, recording that somebody else did and reproduce that in YouTube. After that, everything gets a little bit more, well, what did you do with it? I can't really record somebody else's song and use it on an album. That I have to get some kind of special permission. In every sort of genre, it kind of changes. Like with jazz, we're generally okay with people transcribing other people's music and then performing it, because it's always going to be different. Because in jazz, the focus is it's on your personal interpretation of what's happening, and on improvisation, which will never be the same.
Right.
But in terms of pop music, where there's so little to the actual music, it's like 3 or 4 chords, then you get a little bit more hair, and the whole thing is about making money for a lot of people. So it's like, then you get a little bit more, it gets a little bit more strict in terms of what you can and can't do. But I'd say in terms of YouTube and video, where you're not making any money, you're just kind of putting something out there, hey, here's me. As long as you're playing everything that's happening, as long as you're performing it and you're not taking the physical audio from somebody else, you're pretty much good.
But there's no intellectual rights with even the lyrics of the song? Like,
I'm sure there are. And that's the thing. If they want to come after you, they can get YouTube to take your thing down if you did the lyrics. But if you're singing the lyrics yourself and you're playing all the music yourself, they probably won't. They'll just be like, that's cool. That person's doing my song. Because it's not really taking anything away from them. That's the other thing from the standpoint of big artists. If it's not taking away, if it's only adding, like how many people have done freaking Hello from Adele? It's like, oh my goodness, I'm sick of it. You know? And I didn't even listen to the original. I'm like, oh my god,
I still haven't heard the whole song either.
But in terms of Adele and that project, the more people that do that, the more people are going to buy the original or get plays on the original on YouTube. So, she's unless you're taking her voice and doing something she doesn't want you to do with it, you're pretty much cool. Like it's rare that somebody gets sued for super money unless they're recording something on an album.
See, like when you were saying that, what popped into my head was the word like commodity, because it's kind of changing that song into a commodity, which I guess may not be I don't think it's a bad thing financially for the artist, because the more people know your song, that's always great. I don't know. I think myself, when I'm thinking about it, I think there's an idea of, as an artist, you don't want anything to become a commodity. It just becomes a bit generic after a while. It's just, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
I have lots of thoughts. I think that's so the two things in my own words, the two things that we're talking about is art and business.
Yeah.
And the art side is just pure for the art, doesn't have anything to do with money or who's going to use it, who's going to like it, who's going to redo it. I wrote this song because I think it's beautiful. I painted this painting because I think it's beautiful. And the business side says business side is a commodification of everything. Yeah. It says this painting costs $15,000. If you want it, you can pay $15,000. And so what I hear some people saying, and it doesn't resonate with me at all. Okay. It actually makes me upset, is that art and business are intrinsically two different sides to the same coin. And it's like, you can't be an artist unless you're a business person too, And it's like, man, I think that's short-sighted. I think it's ignorant. I think it's stupid. I think the truth of the matter is, if you want to live in this world off of your art, you have to incorporate and learn the business side of things. You have to learn that from the business standpoint, everything is a commodity. Your voice, your look, your hat is a commodity.
It's true.
I played with one of the voice stars here in France, the kid with the afro, and I was talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I can't change my hair. Like I can't cut my hair. It's in my contract."
Yeah.
It's in my contract.
Yeah.
And that his hair is a commodity.
That's
and
crazy.
how he wears it, and he can't change it. Isn't that crazy?
It is.
But it's like that's the business side of things.
But I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's definitely something I want to talk about with the Artist 2.0 community, because I think too many artists see themselves as an artist and they don't take themselves seriously as a business. Because I think as soon as you want to make a living off of your art, you become an entrepreneur and you become a business, and you have to think of yourself in a more professional way. You can't just be like, oh, I'm a wishy-washy artist and that's that, because it's everything. It's one, respecting your work on a different level, the value of what you're creating, the time that you're putting into it, and expecting other people to pay you accordingly into that. But at the same time,
that's life.
Yeah, that is
right.
life.
That's life. That's not intrinsic to one side or the other.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the way I think it, I think that art is anathema to business. Like, the two are diametrically opposed. The true artist wants to give you all of themselves, or what is it, priceless pieces of themselves, without ever thinking of what they're going to get from you. And the true business person wants to get as much as they can from you while giving you as little as they can. The two are diametrically opposed. And now we live in a world where we need to sort of make a dance between the two of these things. So that's what it is for everyone that's an artist and a business person, to sort of intertwine together. You have to make business and art dance around for yourselves. But I think it's folly. I think it's a mistake to think that they're intrinsically two sides of the same coin, because they don't get along. They don't.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting perspective that I didn't think about, but I think you're completely right in that, because business is all about the bottom line, but artists, we want to give everything that we have, because we just have to express it. It's not even like it's a need. If you're an artist and you've ever had to like stifle your expression or your voice, it's a horrible feeling. It's like a physical need to be able to just express through our creations. So one side of us, we want to give it all away,
right?
And the reality,
you got to eat.
Exactly. My landlord doesn't care that I want to give it all away.
Hey, that's a nice song. Where the rent at?
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that painting. Put your foot in there, literally. See the toes.
Exactly.
But where this red at?
Exactly. And I do think more artists need to kind of marry the two ideas, because I don't think it has to be one or the other. I do think you can find a balance, and it'll
most definitely.
I think it will change depending on your creative outlet. What you do and how it becomes a commodity and not. Because I know, like, in the fine art photography world, less is more. Like, if I have an image and I put it out there and there's like 10,000 of them, it devalues each one.
That's
but
right.
If there's only 10 of them, the value of it becomes a lot more. That's
right. And it's like each of those two things, artistry and business, have their own gravity. Like, they have their own pulls. And so I really think they can inspire each other and they can tug each other into good directions, but you have to create the dynamic between the two in your own life. Otherwise, one of them will run off and you'll be a broke musician doing nothing, or you'll be a greedy punk that's coming up with the crappiest music possible but making a lot of money. And I don't want to be either. Like, I'm not trying to come up with a 3-chord song that makes $1 billion. Absolutely not. But I also want to eat.
Exactly. So those are really great points. So I'm going to start wrapping up this episode. And before I do, I want to give you a chance to let everyone know where they can find out more about you and connect with you online and find out about your upcoming projects.
Okay, the two places that I am mostly involved in putting my stuff out there is Facebook. I have a fan page on Facebook. It's just Josiah Woodson. I'm actually the only Josiah Woodson on Facebook. So
wow, that's a claim to fame.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to get the certified button or something on Facebook.
Yeah, and I just passed 1,000 likes on my fan page. So
you can.
It's not a lot, but I mean, I'm really happy about that. And the other place is my website, just josiahwoodson.com. And I put videos up on those, and I have a couple YouTube accounts, but they're always being spidered through either the Facebook or the website.
Yeah, and I will put links in the show notes for you guys to connect with Josiah and find out what he's up to and his current projects. So I just want to know if you have something you can offer the 2.0 community that kind of helps you in your own creative career. And it could be anything that inspires you, a book, a song, a philosophy, a poem, or, whatever comes to mind.
I think we kind of hit around it often, but if there's any sort of piece of advice that I give myself all the time, and I'm trying to follow it more and more, and other people, is that, and this is on the art side, because I'm a born artist and I'm not a born business person. I'm trying to get that ball rolling, but it's to find the people that inspire you, and then find a way to get around them, to be near them, and to talk to them. I mean, just being in their presence can help you. Just listening to some of their stories can really help you in your own life figure out what you're supposed to do on the artist and on the business side of things. But if there's an artist that you like and they're coming into town, find them, go and talk to them, or be at their show. That's the way you push forward, I think.
Real life connections, definitely. I think today with social media and everything, we take that for granted, or we don't act on it as much, but those are still the most invaluable connections you can make, is to actually talk to someone face to face, have a drink with them, and get to know them personally. I think that's great advice. So thank you for sharing that with the Artist 2.0 community. So get your ass out off the computer and go meet somebody.
That's right.
So I have two questions that I end all the shows with, that I ask all the guests. And
when did I first fall in love with hip hop?
No, it's funny because I never thought about that, but now I know how cheesy it is. So thank you. But before I do, I just want to thank you for being a guest on this episode of Artist 2.0. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I definitely hope you'll come back on and we can talk more about business and all these other things. So I hope you'll come back on the show. So the first question is, what do you think life expects from you?
I think life expects me to die.
Interesting. You want to elaborate on that? No?
I think that's the only thing life actually expects. I think everything else, every other vibration I put out into the cosmos, is not expected.
Okay. And what do you expect from life?
I don't expect anything from life as well. I mean, maybe that's just my disposition, and I'm not advocating this disposition on anybody else, but I personally, through my own experience, I don't think life is going to give me many passes. And I don't even look at life as like a gumball machine where I put in my 25 cents and I get my overinflated gumball. Life is, to me, life is like, all right, I'm going to put 25 cents in. No gumball. Okay. Let me put another. It's a raisin. Hey, thanks for that. Life is like that thing that you have to constantly kind of fight against and get stronger fighting against. That's the way I think about it.
All right, great. So again, thanks for being on the Artist 2.0 podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You can check out everything that Josiah is up to. Check out the links in the show note. You can connect with us on our website, www.artist20.com. And as always, be excellent. Bye, guys.